inside the draft room with Chris Ballard. Always an insightful time when the Colts GM welcomes us into his draft room, and that is exactly what happened this week, and that is what we'll be breaking down on today's edition of Kevin's Corner. I am Kevin Bowen, back, as always, with Joey Molinaro. Joey, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Didn't get the invite. Maybe next year. Year 3. Maybe Chris knows me a little bit. I met him. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully I can be maybe your eyes and ears into that room a little bit. It is a more of a selected group of media members in there, and we will certainly hit on a lot of that on today's podcast. I want to first briefly go over Dontrell Inman, but just a little bit layout of the podcast. We will hit heavily on the film breakdown with Chris Ballard. The first 6 draft picks of 2019 is who Ballard showed film of and gave his, analysis, 2 hours of it from Chris Ballard on Tuesday afternoon. He also gave, I thought, a lot of intel into just in general his 90-man roster, some guys on that roster, how he builds that roster. So we'll also touch on that before we get into Twitter questions as well. So yeah.
Sounds good, man. Hey, we saw that Dontrell Inman over the last week, another receiver that came in last year, just like Ryan Grant. He said elsewhere going to New England. Yeah,
fitting, almost in a way. Probably the one guy on the free agent list that I think a lot of people wanted to bring back goes to your biggest rival. And Joey, he was probably a name that I wanted to bring back for a long, long period of the offseason. I will say this, when you look at what you've lost to receiver and what you've gained, there's no question in my mind the ceiling has been raised significantly at the receiver position. Your losses are Ryan Grant and Dontrell Inman. Those guys' ceilings aren't much taller than their heights. Paris Campbell, Devin Funchess, and I guess we can throw Deion Kane, into the addition group here in 2019. Those guys bring upside that Grant and Inman just don't have.
Inman wasn't on a roster until halfway through the year last year, right?
Exactly.
So, people forget about that, but, he wasn't on a roster for a reason.
Exactly, and Ryan Grant, Baltimore didn't really want him after he, put it in quotes, failed that physical. I think you wanted to get bigger, you wanted to get younger, you wanted to get faster at receiver. Ballard mentioned yesterday, outside of probably rebuilding this defense, the biggest offseason priority for the Colts was to find a bigger target for Andrew Luck. And that's where Devin Funchess obviously comes into play. Now, what you are also banking on is some development out of your coaching staff, which was a huge deal for Chris Ballard when he made the hire of Frank Reich, and Reich put together a coaching staff. It was, we are going to be young. We have got to find teachers that can come in here and turn projects, to a degree, into more ready-made guys. And that's what you have, even with Funchess, who's been in the league for, I guess this will be his 5th NFL season. You are definitely trusting your staff to develop. And I would say probably the one thing with Inman that I always mentioned, and I don't feel like this resonated maybe totally with fans, is Dontrell Inman's got to want to come back here too. When he looks at this depth chart and he sees Devin Funchess, he's probably kind of like, well, that doesn't look great. And Inman isn't an idiot. He's 30 years old. He knows full well there's probably a good chance the Colts are going to draft a wideout. So that all of a sudden means Dontrell Inman, a guy that doesn't play special teams, if he's coming back to Indianapolis, he's your 4th wideout, right? Mm-hmm. Hilton, Funchess, Campbell, and at best, he's your 4th wideout.
Even with his production the last half of last year?
I think so, Joey. Yeah, I do. Trust me, Inman did a lot of good for this team last year. But you gave Devin Funchess $10 million for a reason. And you wanted to get bigger. 6'4", 225 is Funchess. Inman 6'3", 205. And I don't really know if Inman plays that big.
I didn't know he was that big.
Right. I think he's very reliable. And look, the drops were abysmal for this team until he entered the building and calmed those waters big time. But I think when you factor all of those things into it, I firmly believe the Colts at times wanted to bring him back, but it is a two-way street in free agency, and I think Inman knew it didn't take an idiot. I mean, hell, I've said it all offseason, and I'm not smart. The Colts have to get bigger, and they have to get a little faster and younger. Younger was probably one of my biggest calling cards at the receiver position. Upgrade talent, yes. Younger as well. And that's exactly what they've done, and they've raised that ceiling with Funchess and Campbell.
Is it going to be a hindsight 2020 thing here? I just imagine it being week 5 and Funchess can't get into the rotation. He's dropped a couple balls, and Inman's already scored 4 touchdowns for New England. I mean, that's just kind of how it works, right? I mean, you have to roll the dice on Funchess being a guy that you can turn into like an Ebron last year.
I mean, John Simon gets cut from here and goes and wins a Super Bowl in New England. That is the concern. And I think that, and I think Chris Ballard gets that. I think he knows there is a risk to a degree with Funchess in that his biggest weakness is arguably Inman's biggest strength. Now, there's a 6-year age gap, there's a size gap, and there's a long-term gap, definitely, with all of those things. And so, I probably would have tried to squeeze Inman back, but I just don't know how much he was willing to ultimately come back. So I'm not really going to fault, I think, Chris Ballard and the Colts too much for that, because I like the idea of Funchess. It's going to take work, but I like the idea of it. And as I said last week, and I'll say it again this week, I am a huge, huge Paris Campbell guy.
So is Chris Ballard, and so is everybody with the Colts, and he's a guy that knows what he's doing. He's proven it so far in the first 2 years here, and you were firsthand last night, along with a few other, or on Tuesday night, I should say, along with a few other people, to be able to get inside his mind of why they took their first 6 picks and what he liked about them.
Yeah, and I guess before we get into each pick, Joey, I'll just break down a little bit of how the room looks, because it's a different draft room. I know some people obviously have seen it on
with the first pick.
With the next pick, is the Colts.com series that they do, and they have remodeled that entire building, it seems like, especially the scouting area. So basically when you walk into the room, Joey, the walls are filled with just gobs of information. And let me think about, let me see if I can break down the 3 walls. One wall is just all the draft picks for each team. So alphabetical order, each team. And in each team section, there's a needs. So like 3 positional needs that, the Colts obviously feel like is there for that team. And then also a rundown of who that team has signed in the offseason.
Do they have somebody who's more focused on those other teams' needs? Who because, I mean, how do they know that the Minnesota Vikings, what their main are they just looking at the roster and saying, here's what we think their 3 main needs are?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, obviously, you're trying to tap into a little bit of intel if you can with like, hey, Minnesota scouts, what do you think that your needs are? I think you naturally get that when scouts talk on the road, but you have a pro scouting department in-house, and their job is to evaluate the entire NFL on a day-by-day basis. So you know what, your Pittsburgh Steelers need or something like that. So basically, that board is a little bit of a, hey, who's next on the clock? Do we need to trade up above them? Let's go look at their needs. Let's go look at who they've signed in the offseason, those sorts of things. So that's one wall. Another wall is every 90-man roster for all the teams in the league, split up by offense, defense. So just a quick look of, okay, we're competing with this team for a free agent. What does their roster look like right now? Something like that. Is there a team that we feel like could be cutting a position that we need here shortly? Like, is there a bevy of prospects at, running back for another team or something like that? And then the other wall is a list of the street free agents. So all the guys that are on the open market right now. And then once the regular season gets here, that wall turns into also a list of everyone's practice squad. And the Colts rank the best players on each team's practice squad that if they need to nab somebody off a practice squad, Evan Bain, Josh Andrews, guys that they've done in years past, they know that information pretty much firsthand. So that's the layout of the room. There's 4 TVs in the room and 1 projector screen. So, Chris Ballard even joked that at times the Masters might have been on one of those TVs a few weeks back. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I mean, Tiger's on. You can't miss out on history no matter what's going down.
Come on now, PGA Championship this week. Bethpage State Black.
So let's start off. Let's just go through pick by pick of the ones that he broke down to you guys. When in order, right? So let's just start with Rocky Sin.
Yes. He did the first 6 picks. So yeah, let's start with Rock. A guy that they felt like as the year went along, there's just more and more buzz about Rock. Obviously coming from Presbyterian to Temple, there maybe wasn't that ready-made buzz, this time last year for him, but pretty quickly he started to create some of that. And then at the Senior Bowl, I think the Colts really fell in love with him and seeing him. Ballard showed a couple of one-on-one plays with Rocky Sin going against Hunter Renfrow from Clemson, Deebo Samuel from South Carolina. When you watch film, I think the first thing you notice is just there is a presence physically with him. He is a legit 6 foot. He's not going to wow you with like speed. Some people, Ballard, it was adamant that he's not stiff, but did say there is a little bit of tightness maybe with him. More of a powerful athlete, I think, at corner than just this incredibly speedy athlete that's going to make up, a bunch of ground if he gets beat long.
Would make sense. I mean, being a wrestler, not a center fielder.
For sure. Exactly. I mean, I think of wrestlers, I think of like compact, just Rock is his first name, and he is kind of sculpted in a way. The Colts really liked from the combine to the pro day, he improved in some short area quickness testing. That was a big thing that I think resonated with them. Ballard was really adamant throughout the process. He loves when guys work out. I mean, just is obsessed. Like the more you work out, the better. And nowadays, agents are so damn protective over their prospects. If you put up good numbers, stand on those. Mm-hmm. Or if you know you're going to be bad in a certain drill, don't do that drill, which obviously I think has changed a little bit over the years. The Colts did acknowledge that he's got to learn how to play off a little bit more. Again, a lot of man coverage at Temple. Ballard called him a pit bull, which obviously I think is just a great term to use in describing a corner that you want to be physical and you want him to come up and make tackles. Ballard said that when the Colts were on the clock at 26, remember before the draft, he thought there would be about 8 guys realistically in that range. He said 5 of them were on the board at 26. So 5 of the 8 were still there. Couldn't say no to adding another pick. And that's why I think it goes back to what we talked about, after his pre-draft press conference on Monday, leading into Thursday's first round. I think this is a guy that just believed in the depth of this draft in the second and third rounds, and it would have been very difficult, I think, for him to have a player on the board at 26 he would have taken there and not traded back.
Do you have any guesses of who the 5 were and who the 3 were that got taken?
Well, I would assume Jonathan Abram, who went right after. He said that there were 5 on the board at 26, and then when they were on the board at 34, still 3 there. So I guess if you throw some of those picks at me, Joey, that went from 26 to 33, I guess. I think Abram is definitely one of those too. I mean, maybe Tillery from Notre Dame.
Man, I mean, much to your chagrin. But there was a lot of mock drafts at least that
had both those guys
them there.
Abram and Tillery. So basically, when they got to 34, there were 3 guys left. The scheme fit, the character fit. They fell in love with Rocky Sin, and nothing blew them away from a trade offer. He said they had no one offered a first round pick.
Would DeAndre Baker have been?
I think they liked Rock a little bit more because remember, I think they're trying to play some more man, and I think Rock does that a little bit better than Baker. I'm going to guess Abram and Tillery. Who else went in that range?
N'Keal Harry, last pick of the first round.
No, did the Washington tackle go? Caleb McGrady.
Let's see. I just got directed to. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He went to the Falcons, I believe.
Is it Caleb McGarry? I think it is, right?
Or not the Falcons. He went to. Yes, he did because they traded with the Rams.
He was a guy.
McGarry.
They traded with the Rams.
To
Falcons
31. Yeah, they hopped back in the first round again.
Remember when we did Beers with Bowen, Joey? We ran down some scenarios, and we had Caleb McGarry as a guy that I felt like back then, given the Chris Strauser, Howard Mudd area connections, there might have been some intrigue with him. So I think he might have been the other guy in that range. So yeah, those were the things on Rock.
Ben Banigou,
stud of the Senior Bowl. And I put that in all caps, Joey. I would say of all the prospects the Colts drafted from the Senior Bowl, Banigou probably had the best week. And I would say Banigou or Bobby Okereke coming out of that draft room from Tuesday night, I think those are the guys Ballard is intrigued by the most. Ballard flat out said that no one could block him in practice at the Senior Bowl. Felt like he just made some people look bad. And remember, that was the first real introduction Banigou got to being a linebacker, down there. So played some Sam linebacker at rookie minicamp. Now that they're back with the veterans, he's done some more, I think just more of the natural things he did in college, defensive end work, defensive front stuff, being an edge rusher. And he's a guy that is going to impact things right away on third down. And so I think that is what has intrigued the Colts the most is they have a very exceptional athlete that can play in space and can do some things that Bruce Irvin did with Pete Carroll in Seattle. I think that is kind of the NFL comp. I remember Ballard also threw out Jamie Collins.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of Bruce Irvin as well, to where, like we've talked about since the draft happened, there is no crystal clear Colts player from 2018 that Ben Banigou is going to fill that role here in 2019. This is new. This is giving Matt Eberflus a new toy. He showed a play that was pretty impressive from TCU, played Texas Tech last year. Texas Tech ran like a bit of a read option where the quarterback kept it kind of to the short side of the field, and Banigou was lined up to the wide side of the field, and just his lateral movement down the line of scrimmage, boom, he gets that quarterback, maybe a small gain, if it was any gain at that. And that is where I think you see the common theme in Banigou and Okereke. It's the run and strike ability at linebacker. It's Deshaun Watson has escaped the pocket. It's Marcus Mariota has escaped the pocket. Lamar Jackson. I'm trying to think of young quarterbacks in the AFC that really run it. Can you close that gap? I mean, there were some plays last year, man. I remember watching Leonard and Watson kind of meeting right there at the sideline where, if that's John Bostic, your starting linebacker a couple years ago, sorry to bring him up. I know he's a Steeler, or was a Steeler.
Yeah, he got cut.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I can't imagine he lasted long.
Devin Bush in, John Bostic out.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
If that's John Bostic, that gain for Watson might be 8 yards. But if that's Darius Leonard, that gain's only 3 yards.
Yeah.
Something like that. So I think that's what they were really, really intrigued by him as an athlete. And again, it was that Senior Bowl element that really stood out. And I bring up the Seattle defense, and we'll bring it up again for Marvell Tell a little bit later when we break him down. But remember, Ed Dodds, your assistant general manager, was in Seattle. The Colts like that scheme. Don't feel like there's many differences between their scheme and how the Colts run their defense. Maybe a few slight differences, but nothing too major. And ultimately, Bruce Irvin, Jamie Collins, think of those guys because there's no comp here in Indianapolis, so we got to go a little elsewhere to try to find just what that role for Banigou will look like.
And Ed Dodds, he was there. I mean, that was the Richard Sherman, the Bruce Irvin heydays. Correct.
Yes, Brandon Browner, Cam Chancellor,
Earl Thomas, all those guys.
KJ Wright. I mean, Bobby all those Wagner. Guys that they had. And when you looked at what Seattle did, I mean, they drafted yes, there was a Cliff Averill or a Michael Bennett edition, but for the most part, man, especially the back end, they drafted incredibly well. And those are, I think, that is a blueprint I think Ballard is trying to mimic.
I feel like over the last few years, Kevin, we're starting to get kind of a blueprint for just the player that Ballard's going to draft, right? It's like looking forward to 2020 draft, 2021. I think about length, speed, Senior Bowl.
Yes.
Character.
Yes.
Smart.
All of it.
5 of those things, it's like, okay, we could narrow down, okay, this is just somebody who you would probably see he'd be interested
Definitely.
in.
We have a very, very close blueprint. So I think what the Colts will be seeking in future drafts. You know, it was interesting listening to Ballard yesterday mention that height means a lot to him. And maybe that wouldn't be the first measurable I would have thought of. Because I do think there are guys that play bigger than their size at all positions. T.Y. Hilton, comes to mind. Quarterbacks certainly comes to mind. Look at Kenny Moore at corner as well. Now, he mentioned specifically with Moore, he has a wingspan that is much, much longer than what 5'9" is on the roster sheet. So height to him, he says, if they don't meet the height measurable at their respective position, you better be a dominant trait in speed or as an athlete. Mm-hmm. Now, Moore, again, makes up for it, which is, it's funny with Kenny Moore, the Colts never talked to him during the entire draft process. He worked out here in Indy. His agency is represented here in Indy. He went to, I think, Valdosta State, I want to say, so he has no connection to Indianapolis from a college, high school background. But he worked out here. He goes undrafted. Then he puts great film on with New England in the preseason. And that's when the Colts eventually claimed him during the cutdown. So, yes, we now have – we had a decent idea of some of those attributes, but it has been reconfirmed big time here with this 2019 class.
All right, maybe the gem of the draft, everybody's shining, pony or whatever you want to call it in Paris Campbell.
Ooh, shiny pony. I like that.
I don't know.
A horse? I mean, was that a Colt thing?
It could have been. Yeah, I was thinking more of like he's not a one-trick pony, but he's shiny and he's everybody's excited about him.
Yes, I would say that is an understatement. Ballard's quote was, "Sometimes you just get lucky," and I think what he means by that is A, he thought Paris Campbell could be a late first-round pick, and B, I go back to what I said earlier about the objectives for the Colts this offseason. Get bigger at receiver, and continue to change the body types on the defensive side of the ball. And then like number 3, and honestly it's probably more like number 5, like there's a big drop-off from those first two, was get more explosive if you can at receiver. Mm-hmm. And by trading back, it's interesting, Joey, when you think about these trade backs, like, do you definitely take Darius Leonard 36 overall last year if you don't have that 37th pick from trading back with the Jets? I mean, who knows? These are all what ifs. Same thing here with Campbell. If you don't trade back, and you don't have, I think Banigou went like 48th overall, something like that, and Banigou's on the board there, do you take Banigou at 59 instead of Paris Campbell? It's all just very, very intriguing what-if scenarios that I would love to just get all these GMs hammered drunk in the NFL and just be like, tell me, true serum time, tell me.
It's a house of cards, really. I mean, one card falls one way, and then it's just trickle-down effect.
Exactly. And I mean, I mentioned it a few weeks ago, Clay Matthews. The card was in for the Colts, and Green Bay trades up, and the rest is history there. I think why Campbell slid.
Whoa.
Boy, sled. Am I ready for snow?
I think so, man. Are you ready to go hit some sleds with Ben Banigou?
Back-to-back bachelor parties in Scottsdale, Miami. Woo! Your boy maybe isn't all the way back yet. Miami's a different world.
Yeah, it is.
God,
I bet.
I can't do it. I don't belong. The high-end production from Campbell, really just 1 year at Ohio State. And now I'm kind of saying to myself, well, I mean, I guess DK Metcalf ended up falling, but it's like Metcalf, didn't have that crazy production, and almost it's like a byproduct of what Ohio State is. Like, they've got a lot of talent. I mean, Johnny Dixon is here, and Terry McLaurin is here.
Yep.
And, they're just loaded. And then I don't know if people are maybe as willing to be patient with Paris Campbell and letting him complete the route tree learning that he needs to do. The Colts certainly believe he can and will complete that. But it's more a matter of just when he completes that. Ballard, I think, is very, very willing to be patient, knowing full well that Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni can still get him to produce from day one. And this is what we have said so much in this podcast. What we really like about Reich and Sirianni, you play to your players' strengths. Eric Ebron ain't going to be an inline blocker for 40 snaps, even if Jack Doyle is on IR. No. We need to keep Eric Ebron doing the things he does well. That's how Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni think. Well, with Paris Campbell, let's not throw the kitchen sink at him. If he can play a little bit of outside, great from day one. But if not, you have Hilton, you have Funchess, you have some other guys that can fill those roles. You just got to let Paris Campbell touch the football.
Yep.
And I said it last week, and I'll say it again. High percentage touches. Chris Ballard showed the play against Michigan. It is a jet sweep. Campbell gets to the edge, and no one touches him 78 yards. I mean, it is literally your little. I think it honestly might go down as a pass.
Yeah.
For Dwayne
Pass,
Haskins.
yeah.
But it's the easiest completion you're ever going to make, and it is Paris Campbell get to the hash mark, get to the sideline, and against a great defense that had numerous NFL draft picks a couple weeks back, he doesn't get touched.
Honestly, you could have just drafted him off that Michigan game.
Right?
Between that jet sweep shovel pass and then that little smoke screen where he's coming back behind the line of scrimmage, catches it, and then just weaves his way for 35 yards.
Exactly. I mean, Michigan film, which is a lot better than the IU film, or at least a lot better.
It's the Indiana Hoosiers we're talking about.
a lot better barometer. I still can't believe. Who was the analyst? Did we ever figure that out?
I think there's two. I can't.
Like Daniel Jeremiah?
Yeah, Jeremiah said it.
I like Daniel Jeremiah.
So do
too.
I. But then maybe Kuiper. I don't know. But that's still so funny.
One thing I'll be curious about, Joey, what does he do as a returner? Kick returner was the thing he did most at Ohio State. I don't think he did punt returns this year. But in today's NFL, what matters more? Punt return.
Yeah.
A, it's ball security is at a much more of a premium. And B, teams just don't kick off as much as they don't kick off to the returner as much as they used to. No, they boom that thing through the end zone.
Yep.
So if Campbell can be your punt returner, that might be a little bit scary for your back end of your roster guys that could offer some special teams, i.e. Chester Rogers. The Colts do think there is a skill set for Campbell at punt returner. But look, let's go back to Nyheim Hines last year.
Oof. I think it was 42, man. I really do.
Yeah, I am a number aesthetics guy. I am a little bit of a.
I think that threw him.
You saw Deion Kane move to 11. What do you think? Is that too Ryan Grant?
Nah, 6 is cool. Okay. I'm cool with that. Yeah, but once he switched to 21, I feel like he was just cleaner. And
he was
if you put him back there for the punt now, he might be a little bit better.
I found it interesting that Ballard mentioned that. Interesting and something that I also agree on. When they evaluated the receivers for this class, the element they were looking for was yards after catch. So if they were going to draft a receiver, you're going to have to do something post-catch. So I don't know maybe if that plays into a Harry or, a Samuel, maybe some of these other wideouts that could have been in that range. But he made it clear that that was the trait that they were looking for. And they were really poor in that last year. From a Colts standpoint,
doesn't get much better than Paris Campbell at that.
No. I mean 4.3, 140 and all that. Body type, Ballard mentioned before we move on to Bobby Okereke. He says when he looks at Campbell, he kind of sees a similar body to Jeremy Maclin.
Long, lean.
And I always thought, Campbell is listed like 6'2", 200. I always felt like Maclin had a little bit of a thicker build to how he played the game. You know, when he was healthy, especially in college at Missouri, that dude was a game breaker.
Yep.
But, like, he had a bit of a sturdiness to him that you didn't feel like he was going to break down. Now, his career has definitely tapered off. But, you know, people are asking, is it Tyreek Hill? Is it Percy Harvin? What is that exact, you know, fit for Campbell or comp for Campbell? And I don't think Ballard wants to go there with Hill or with Harvin, but it's body type of a Macklin and then post-catch stuff that, you know, maybe as a Macklin, maybe it's better than him, but that's kind of where the physique aspect comes into it.
Everybody's really excited about Paris Campbell, but Chris Ballard might be the most excited for Bobby Okereke.
God, he loves him, man. He loves Bobby Okereke. Hawking the quarterback, which just sounds like a phrase like filled with dip spit in the Coke lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, hawking the quarterback is how he often described Bobby Okereke and what he can do. And I go back to the example I used with Ben Banigou. And when you have Deshaun Watson and the Marcus Mariota's breaking the pocket, can you close that speed? Can you make that gap? Make a quarterback think twice about leaving the pocket, honestly. So this is going to be a battle. Bobby Okereke versus Anthony Walker. You know, I wrote it Monday. We had a mailbag question about it on 1070thefan.com. You know, is Anthony Walker going to lose his starting job? You know, I asked Ballard yesterday, what does Bobby Okereke have to do to win that starting job? And he made it pretty clear. It's the cerebral aspect to the position. And Anthony Walker, Ballard told a great story yesterday about how blown away Ballard was back in 2017 when Anthony Walker came into the combine room for the Colts and started getting on the chalkboard, getting on the whatever, and explaining what Northwestern was doing as a defense. Anthony Walker is not going to wow you with testing numbers or length numbers like Okereke or Leonard or, you know, Banigou. But, man, that dude between the ears, he's got it. And Okereke went to Stanford. So, like, I'm not undermining the intelligence of Bobby Okereke, but you're still coming to the NFL. It's different. You got to learn a system. You got to get all your checks, all your reads. There is a learning curve there. And that's why I still sit here and think to myself, Anthony Walker, I just can't go there yet of him losing his starting job. But having said that, I think Okereke is going to play. I think he's going to play on passing downs. They love the length. You know, he had the longest wingspan of any linebacker at the combine. Ballard showed a play yesterday. I think it was against Arizona State. It was one of those plays where it's kind of a spread look for Arizona State. So the running back, might have been kind of a second and long, third and long. Stanford is probably cheating back a little bit with the linebacker. So Okereke's first couple steps are back. Arizona State running back gets 6-7 yards, and Okereke runs to his left to get to the running back and dives, and Ballard froze it where the wingspan was almost fully extended for Okereke, and the left fingertips hit that ball. He forces a fumble. It's a small, minute detail, but Ballard's like, if his wingspan is 3 inches shorter, he doesn't get that ball. He maybe hits his hand or his wrist. The running back could run through that tackle, and it totally changes the whole complexion of the game. So, again, it's very fine print, but, I mean, Darius Leonard punching the ball out with go-go gadget arms, we saw a lot last year. So I think that's what they really love about Okereke. And I think it was pretty clear this offseason. The Colts wanted to, obviously, now that we've seen the draft, they wanted to improve their depth at linebacker, wanted to change some skill sets, but especially inside linebacker. You know, I think that is where you like Anthony Walker, but, you know, go back to that Giants game late last year when Anthony Walker, I don't believe, played. I think Clayton Geathers is out. You had like a Ahmad Thomas coming up from your practice squad. You don't want that again. Yeah, I think that's why there was legit interest in C.J. Mosley. You know?
Yeah.
When you think all the way back to free agency. But, again, like Banigou, run and strike. with Bobby Okereke.
And there's been some comparisons that we've talked about for Darius Leonard and Okereke that's trait-wise similar.
Physical traits.
Chris Ballard addressed that last night.
Not as directly. I think he wanted to make it clear, look, he's not Darius Leonard, but he's going to be a heck of a pro. I don't think he wants to set those expectations for the kid. But as you said, Joey, the physique, the length, the size, the wingspan, that is Leonard-like. Same thing with drafting Gary Green in round 6. His biggest physical comp in the NFL from a testing measurable trait is Kamoko Ture. There are things that line up to where hopefully when we get into more 2020 draft talk, we'll have some prospects that we can maybe pinpoint a little bit better now that Ballard's going into his 4th draft here at the Colts.
All right, a couple more, and they traded up 20 picks to get this guy. We talked about him last week, how much they love him, and that's Khari Willis.
Yeah, instincts are exceptional, Ballard was saying. Feels like he's just solid, good everywhere. Might not be exceptional outside of the instincts, but just a really sound guy that they love the versatility. And this is something that Ballard has mentioned. He's grown as a value asset that has probably moved up his board. You need versatility, and you need it on the defensive side of the ball. And I really enjoyed that he showed Willis not just as a box safety. That's his highlight film when you watch it. But no. Here's Khari Willis as a free safety, as a strong safety. A lot of him playing nickel. So they feel like he can do a lot of things for this defense. I thought it was interesting. Ballard mentioned that he had Willis in a group of 3 or 4 safeties they liked in this draft. He definitely was not the 3rd or 4th safety taken in this draft. He's probably like the 10th or 12th safety taken. That's just off the top of my head. But they moved up 20 spots for him because there was such a steep drop from Khari Willis to where they had the next safety on their board. So I think it was not, panic necessarily, but hey, we need to improve our safety depth. We know the injury concerns there. This is the guy we like. There's a steep drop-off. Let's go ahead and move up. He feels like he was a top 3 or 4 safety in this draft class and maybe not a whole lot of drop-off from a guy like Jonathan Abrams. Yeah, but Ballard also said as good as any tackler, any safety tackler.
Would an interesting comp in Colts history be like an Antoine Bethea? I don't know why.
Yeah, that's a good one to throw out there. I think that's fair. I would say Bethea might have been more known as a deeper safety, but he definitely did some other things, especially when Bob Sanders' career came to an end. I don't think, Hooker has the dominant trait. Geathers has the dominant trait. Hooker's the deep center field, rangy, sideline to sideline. Yeah. I'm your center fielder. Geathers is, I'm the muscle. Yep. I'm the enforcer. I'm going to come up and play in the box. I think Willis offers you a little bit of both. Or just you feel comfortable to where, you put Malik Hooker in the box, you're kind of like, that's a red flag, or just more of a yellowish flag. You put Clayton Geathers at deep center field, it's kind of a yellow flag. You move Willis around, you're kind of like, okay.
He can handle it.
Not going to be a Pro Bowler, maybe as a box safety or as a deep center field safety, but yeah, he can handle it. I think that's a good way to put it.
All right, last one you guys went over, and that's the safety turning corner out of USC, Marvell Tell.
Yeah, the 6'2" corner, and this is the other Seattle comparison, Joey. Think long, and I go back to what I've said earlier. It's versatility. It's a guy that they think can play a little bit all over. And they like what they saw at rookie minicamp with him playing corner. And they can be patient with this, They don't need Marvell Tell to come in and play 40 snaps from day one. Yeah. But they can be patient with this. I go back to, I asked Matt Turpentine, one of the Colts scouts a few weeks ago, why is this not TJ Green? Kind of explain that a little bit. I think the Colts they like Marvell Tell between the ears. Dialed in, serious guy. We all watch TJ Green play the game of football. I mean, what the hell was he? I mean, some of those late hit personal foul penalties, hitting guys 15 yards. Guys are getting 15-yard gains, and he's standing over them, teabagging them.
Yep.
It's just kind of like, come on, man. So I think Tell's wired a little bit differently than that. So So yeah, those were the 6 picks, man.
All right, so with that, there's going to be some more notes, some more insights that's going down. What else do we need to know from yesterday evening at the Colts complex that Chris Ballard dropped for you guys?
Okay, let me run through my notes a little bit. And again, this was definitely more 53, 90-man roster-centric stuff. And a little bit of roster building as well. So let's start here. Ballard isn't currently worried about the lack of beef at defensive tackle. I think we saw over the weekend. Al Woods signed with Seattle. You only have one guy over 300 pounds on your defensive line right now. That's Grover Stewart. But I think Ballard still likes how that group held up, even when Al Woods dropped out of the lineup and almost out of the rotation a little bit. The Colts did play some pretty elite running backs last year and did a very nice job against those guys. So he feels like this group can hold up. Danico Autry and Tyquan Lewis, I've said it all offseason long, and for people that haven't heard it, Tyquan Lewis is going to compete at the 3 technique. He's going to be an inside guy here in 2019. He likes Jahad Ward as well. And I guess, to me, I think it kind of rules out Ndamukong Suh. Yeah, I know it's been a popular name people have thrown out there. So I after the draft, I was kind of like, when are they going to add a running back? When are they going to add a defensive tackle? Well, they added a running back, which I probably had higher on the list, but I don't think defensive tackle necessarily is going to be in the mold there. Ballard had some terrific quotes on just how serious the rebuild has been on defense. He said that when he took over the job in 2017, he felt like there was a single defensive player that he could build around, and that was Clayton Geathers. One. I mean, that to me is just like, why? And I don't disagree with him again when it's like, you have to get younger on defense, you have to upgrade the talent, and you're undergoing a pretty seismic shift in scheme change. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he cut all the fat from those 30-year-olds and older guys, or even some of the draft picks, the T.J. Greens, Antonio Morrisons. I guess DeJon Smith, he might have still been around at that point. All those guys. So, yeah, he had some pretty poignant quotes about just how poor the defensive talent was. And Chris Milton, Clayton Geathers, Matthias Farley, the only defenders left from when Ballard arrived. He reiterated this, kind of beating a dead horse a little bit. Just he's grown, he's matured, and some wisdom he's learned over the years has probably strengthened how much he believes in character. And I think last year has bolstered that belief in character. Like, he really focused on that, and he saw how that team, he pointed to Hines. Hines is a high-character guy. He says, if that guy's fragile, doesn't have high character, I don't know if he bounces back from the poor preseason.
Yeah, for sure.
That really makes a lot of sense to me. Ballard, as he always does when I feel like character gets brought up, he doubled down on the point of like, look, I will take some risks. There will be risks. I know that. I know me. But, man, I really like character. Just a couple more. Quincy Wilson, his body has changed pretty significantly since he was drafted. Ballard threw out the numbers, 214 pounds, 14 or 15% body fat when he was drafted, Wilson. Down to 192-ish here this spring, and about 7% body fat. So definitely a different-looking Quincy Wilson. And the thing that Ballard really likes about him right now is just how versatile he can be. He threw out 5 positions. He feels like Wilson can play for them on the defensive side of the ball. Outside corner, nickel, dime, maybe even a little safety as well. So, yeah, I think that's where Quincy Wilson's biggest calling card is now. Yes, he's going to compete as that outside corner, but his versatility, the ability maybe even play a little man-to-man on tight ends is something that he really, really likes. Yeah, I think that covers everything. I guess we should go over injuries.
Right.
Yeah. And I've got 2, by the time you listen to this, probably 3 articles up on 1070thefan.com. One goes over all the film breakdown of the draft picks. One goes over more of the roster-centric stuff. And then another one will go over the injuries updates. Clearly the biggest name, Darius Leonard. Ankle procedure, surgery, if you want to call it, last week to clean up a spot that had been a bit nagging. I think he participated in the first week of the offseason program, and they just felt like, all right, let's just take care of it. It's a 6-week rehab, so he will be out until training camp. Obviously, that 6 weeks from last week is what, like the end of June, somewhere around there. So he should have a full month of working out before. Not ideal, just because, Darius Leonard missed the entire spring last year. And you don't love seeing that, but don't think it's anything to freak out about by any means. Ballard said he played with like a high ankle sprain at times last year, which is...
Those are rough.
Kind of wild, yeah. He was wearing a boot at times in the locker room. He still practiced a decent amount, though, last year. Jack Doyle, Ross Travis, Deion Kane, those are probably all guys to kind of hold off on until training camp. Did say Doyle's weight mass has gotten up. Deion Kane, it's something that, again, should definitely be clear for camp, but as Ballard has said before, like with Malik Hooker and the ACL, these ACLs, before they get fully back, that's more of a, 13, 14-month thing than that. But he doesn't expect Deion Kane to be on PUP to start the year. Malik Hooker, full go. Anthony Walker on the men still. He was banged up last year. Eric Ebron dealing with a groin surgery that he had early last month. So he's a bit limited right now in what he can do. But I don't think any of those players will be in jeopardy for missing camp.
All right, Manuel, we getting some Twitter questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll start with the guy, Cody Felger, first in line here. Who do you think has the most receptions, most receiving yards, most receiving touchdowns, coolest touchdown dance in 2019?
Oh, wow. T.Y. Certainly T.Y. for receptions and yards, right?
Yes.
Gotta think that.
Yes.
Touchdowns, probably a little bit more up in the air. That's tough. I think it's going to be really balanced this year. I think Ebron's, unfortunately for his sake, probably going to come back to earth a little bit from a touchdown standpoint.
Yeah.
It's just what's going to happen when you get a few more weapons. I guess I'll go with Ebron, maybe just as like he has 7, leads the group. Hilton has 6, Doyle has 5, Funchess has 5, something like that. I think it'll be incredibly balanced. Not good for fantasy owners. Last one, touchdown dance. Ebron's going to pull out all the stops.
Yep.
I like a good traditional T.Y. I like a good traditional Jack Doyle spike. What do we know? Campbell, Funchess, they got anything?
Well, that's what I was going to... I'm going T.Y. in the first two. I'm going Funchess receiving touchdowns.
Okay.
Taking over after Ebron, carrying the torch there like he did last year, and then touchdown dance, I'm going Campbell.
Ooh, okay.
I think the Rook brings out some heat after he busts one.
You don't think the Rook will be afraid to kind of be fined?
Man, all these kids now, they have it so planned out.
Look at you, get off my lawn guy.
Oh, it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying. It's for the Instagram, dude. It's going viral, and he's trying to get up there.
Okay. I'll go with Campbell then.
All right, cool. Let's see here. From Sam, in 5 years, will the Colts 2018 draft class be considered the best draft class in NFL history? Oh my! What would it take for them to be viewed that way?
Well, I've said it after year one. I think it's the best draft class in NFL history. What would it take for that to happen? Continued all-pro caliber campaigns from Darius Leonard and Quentin Nelson. Braden Smith continuing to be your starter at right tackle. Kamoko Turi and Tyquan Lewis eventually getting into the starting lineup. Naeem Hines, being a factor, and probably Deion Kane. That might be maybe the missing ingredient of that group. And I would say for you to legitimately be looked at as the best NFL draft class in the history of the league in the next 5 years, at least one Super Bowl. At least. Sooner or later, you got to win.
Right.
Sooner or later, you grade draft classes off of what did that group do for a core amount of years? What did they do to create a longevity of your franchise? So ultimately, I think wins probably supersede, honestly, a lot of what you do from an individual accolade standpoint.
We got a change up here. Darius Leonard, formerly Darius Leonard Hype Train, is now the Paris/Hilton Hype Train. Looking forward to next year. Between both years, which prospect do you find was the most fascinating that Ballard discussed in his prospect film session?
Well, I would say last year, it might sound easy for me to say now, but it probably was Leonard. It was either Leonard or Toure. I am fascinated by guys that don't have resumes that scream guaranteed second-round picks. So why did you make that pick? That's what I enjoy about these film sessions.
True.
I don't walk out of there being like, oh, yeah, that's 10 Hall of Famers he just drafted. No, like I get it. Of course, he's going to be in love with a lot of his draft picks, but I really appreciate his intel and, okay, this is why he fits us. This is why we feel like he fits us. And this is why I'm not worried about South Carolina State's level of competition or Kamoko Toure having 10 sacks in his career at Rutgers or however many he had. So I would say definitely Leonard last year. This year, probably Banigou or Okereke. Man, he loves Okereke. He loves Banigou. I think he really likes Banigou because of something new. Yeah. Something he didn't have last year. So, yeah, I'll go with Banigou.
From Anton, I just don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Hinchis. Is it the
Alabama guy?
Yeah, probably my favorite undrafted free agent. Got anything on him?
Hale
Hinchis.
We're just calling him Hale.
Okay.
Hale the Sigma Chi at Alabama. He's a blocker. I don't have much more than that. Like I said last week or a couple weeks ago, I think it's going to be difficult, man, for an undrafted free agent to make this team. I know that inevitably probably one will, but it's a group that I'm not sitting there saying like it's void of talent, but it's just a deeper roster. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's an injury that happens at tight end, I think Hale would have a legit shot, especially if it's more to a blocking tight end. So yeah.
Rusty Lloyd, let's say Chester Rogers either doesn't make the roster or gets injured and is out for the year. Who would be your punt returner at that point?
It's a really good question, Rusty. Probably one of the more open competitions the Colts have. I know Nyheim Hines wants to get another crack at it.
Good for him.
Good for him, and honestly, I think that might be wise for him.
I'd be scared as hell to do that. to hop back out there? No.
Yeah. But I think it's good for him, Joey, in that like Paris Campbell might take some of his role offensively.
Yeah.
So if you can do something else, that might help you long term to keep your roster spot. I think the Colts are going to want to try Paris Campbell at punt returner, but where's the ball security? Are you throwing too much at the rookie? All those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. I think you have to take into consideration there. Is there another wideout? Is Zach Pascal? I don't think Deion Kane or Reese Fountain scream punt returner to me really at all. That's going to be a big, big job. If it goes to Paris Campbell, honestly, it's probably a good thing for the Reese Fountains of the world in trying to make the roster. Paris Campbell's making the roster. Mm-hmm. So if you give him a duty that you're potentially going to give to Chester Rogers, that can help a guy like Fountain who's trying to make the roster over a Chester Rogers.
Man, Reese Fountain, we talked about it. Tough spot.
Tough spot, man. Tough.
Big summer coming up for that guy.
Huge.
All right, from Andy, would @James_Holzauer bet on the Colts to win 11 games? He's a sports gambling pro.
Oh, you know who that is.
Who is it?
That's the Jeopardy guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is he still alive?
I don't know. I feel like not because I haven't seen it very much on social media recently.
Have you watched him at all?
Is he like Rain Man? What's going on?
The dude sucks. He pisses me off so much. I hate him.
Really?
He's just
arrogant,
cocky as can be, and like has just a way to manipulate the board a little bit based off a gambling background. Like he immediately goes for the 2000.
Big one.
And then he tries to find the doubles after that. Probably smart. I just don't. Jeopardy is a little bit of a fun game to me, and I think he's taking the fun out of it.
Okay. Well,
if he hasn't lost by now, I want him to lose. I watched some game where he only won by $1. It was awesome.
11 games, though? What do you bet on him?
Ooh, that's a good call. Yeah, he'd set the over-under at 10.5.
He would?
He would.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is a guy that knows what he's doing. Wants to work in a Major League Baseball front office, he says.
From Joshua Sutton, is Ballard and Reich's plan for the D-line to essentially play 4 DNs on passing downs?
So that's actually a really good question, Josh. That's actually something Ballard mentioned yesterday. He's like, yeah, we want to get to the point where it is 4 defensive ends kind of on third down. And does that look like Sheard, Houston, Banagoo, Teray? Does Autry show that he can be pretty effective, in that role? Is Tyquan Lewis in that mix? That's what they want to get to on third downs. I think the personnel packages we see the Colts use this year will be so much more creative and diverse. I'm going to have to be looking down and being like, okay, who's out there right now? I'm going to be doing that a lot more than just last year when it was like, here comes Quincy Wilson on the field for nickel. I think there's going to be a lot more movement with the personnel groupings.
From Zach, he makes a demand of you, actually. He says, predict what wide receivers make the roster.
Ooh, Zach, like a good little demand. Hilton, Funchess, Campbell, Kane. Oof, that's 4.
Rodgers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Chester Rogers would be your punt returner. I think it's a lot to put on Paris Campbell's shoulders to put all that on him as a rookie. Look, you're going to cut Reese Fountain, Marcus Johnson, Zach Pascal. Those are 3 guys that were on this 53-man roster at various times last season. I think it's going to be a great battle, though, Joey.
For sure. Be fun to watch up at Grand Park, no doubt. @_D Brown, who will be the hidden gem from the undrafted free agents this year?
D Brown, the Illinois guy? Remember D Brown?
Oh, I do remember
that
D
headband?
Brown. The headband, the baggy headband, baggy shorts. Dude was a baller.
Who gets the Michigan job?
I don't know.
What about Tom Crean?
Really? Heading back to the Big Ten?
He's got some ties to Michigan.
Didn't he just take the Georgia job?
Yeah, but Georgia ain't
Georgia
Michigan,
basketball.
man. Yeah, no one wants to coach in the SEC if you're not at Kentucky.
Alabama, Georgia, and Auburn basketball, weirdest things ever.
Super weird. But I'll give Michigan credit. They've made their basketball program a lot more respectable than most football schools do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what D Brown ask?
Who will be the hidden gem from the undrafted free agents?
There's a couple wideouts that I actually am looking forward to seeing more of. Penny Hart and I think it's Ashton Dulin. Who knows? Went to Malone College. You give me 10 states to guess where Malone College is, I'd have no idea. But I do love Karl Malone's game.
I was going to say, yeah, Utah maybe.
Smooth, yeah, honestly. Those are some of the guys that I'm intrigued by. Maybe some of the interior defensive linemen, Thompson and Robinson, a Charleston guy and a Northwestern guy. I'd be curious to see a little bit. There aren't many of them. There's 10 of them max, I think. I think they just cut one yesterday. So, yeah, those are some of the guys.
From @Adam5467, if Jim Irsay's dream of 3 straight Super Bowls is to be realized, do you believe the first has to be won in the next 3 years with your young 2 All-Pro talent under their rookie deals?
Wow, that's a really good question, Adam. Usually when you get some Twitter people that have 10 numbers in their names, it can get a little dicey. That's a good question. In the next 3 years?
Yep. First one. First title.
Yeah, probably at the back end of that 3 years, though. It will be difficult, coming down that pike to retain a lot of the defensive talent that you've drafted if everything goes according to plan. I would, if I could stretch that out to 3 to 4, 3 to 5 years, I'd feel a little bit better about that. But, Andrew Luck would be 32 years old when you win the first Super Bowl, right in the middle of potentially his prime. Yeah, I will agree with Adam. I will say on the back end of that 3-year dream of Jim Irsay.
Brett Stockglausner, do you think Deion Kane will have much impact this season? What's the ceiling for 19 and 20?
I think the Colts are pumping the brakes a little bit on that. I think they love Deion Kane, and they believe full well that Deion Kane would have been one of the better receivers in this draft class this year. But I think it's something where, remember, it took maybe late last year before you felt like Malik Hooker was getting all the way back. You got a wideout coming in and out of breaks, things like that. So I maybe have tempered a little bit on Kane, just that you don't need it. If you got Funchess, think about the resources Chris Ballard invested at receiver this year, Joey. That was a debate we had all offseason long. Would he do it?
Mm-hmm.
He paid a wideout $10 million. I think it was the second highest annual value of any wideout this year in free agency, and then you spend a second-round draft pick on a receiver as well. That is a lot of investment to a position that Chris Ballard usually doesn't invest like that. So yeah, I don't think we should have a ton of expectations for Deion Kane, because I don't think it's necessary to have big expectations for him.
Right.
But I am very, very curious to watch more of him and just see him in game settings.
From Gav, do you think it's possible for Reese Fountain to make the 53-man roster?
Possible, yes. Likely, might be too harsh right now, but I would say that he doesn't have a 50-50 shot to make this team right now. It's just...
That's fair.
Maybe if he keeps 6 wideouts, yes, but, Zach Pascal and Marcus Johnson deserve a fair shot. We just don't know with Reese Fountain, man. We just don't know. A couple nice catches late in the preseason last year.
A weird rookie year.
Yeah, a big drop. I guess I don't know how big it was. It was big if maybe you had the Chiefs like minus 14 in the AFC divisional game, or the Colts plus 14, whatever that drop touchdown would have done to the final score. I'm excited to see Reese Fountain the next few weeks, Joey. I am.
Yep.
OTA start Tuesday.
Last ones I have here, Kevin. This is from, who's this from? This is from Steven. Assuming both Ebron and Doyle have healthy and productive seasons, what is the most likely outcome? Colts re-sign Ebron, Colts re-sign Doyle, Colts re-sign both, or they don't re-sign either of them.
Boy, Steven, that is a hard hitter. That's good, really good. Chris Ballard loves Jack Doyle.
Everybody around here, right?
Yeah, but Chris Ballard's not even an indie guy. I guess now he is, but he loves him. Loves him some Jack Doyle. You try really hard to re-sign both. I don't know, man. You can't re-sign both, right? Because then you have Ross Travis and Mo Alley Cox knocking on the door. Those two have to do something to eliminate you re-sign both.
Right.
Doyle would be 30 years old, though. I honestly, I try not to cop out because I love Twitter questions. I love our listeners. I love our followers. No, I'm not going to cop out. That's soft. I will say, I'll say you re-sign both, but you really got to talk both into like.
It's gonna be kind of friendly.
Yeah, you got to hope there's a bit of a hometown discount.
Yeah, especially from Doyle.
Well, I'd say honestly, especially from Ebron.
You could say for both, really.
Right. I think Doyle has reached the point of his career, and this is not me like talking to Jack Doyle at all. This is strictly my opinion. It's been a hell of a run. You can re-sign a 2-year deal here in Indy for whatever, $6 million a year. That's pretty good money. Eric Ebron's gonna say, cha-ching.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. Ebron's got to take more of the discount.
Back up the Brinks truck, baby.
Right.
And then Steven also asks, who do you think will be the Colts' top 3? Who do you think will be the Colts' top 3 sack leaders this season?
Houston Sheard.
You wanted to.
Banigu.
You wanted to.
Autry. Yeah. Autry had some pretty good. What, he had 8-9 sacks last year?
Just got to keep it to 2 pumps, man. Or 1 pump.
That was a lot of pumps he had in that Kansas City game. A lot of pumps.
Yeah, man, that's all I got for Twitter questions.
I got a couple that I'll get through real quick here. I think a lot of in-depth roster questions here. Chris, with the top 3 DN spots mostly in stone, who do you expect to be between for the last spot? Muhammad, Gary Green, Danny Nichols. Is that who they signed yesterday?
Daddy
Nichols, Dandy Nichols. He's got a weird name. Or maybe a surprise cut of Sheard. No, they're not cutting Jabal Sheard. I just can't see it happening.
Not a Simon from last year?
No, I'm sorry. I can't go there. Sheard's been a 16-game starter for you, man.
Yeah.
Muhammad, I would say, I thought he gave you good snaps last year, but, Green's a draft pick. He's got that going for him. Greg, excluding seventh rounders, which draft pick has the highest chance of being cut? Looks like we may have to let go of some decent talent. Probably EJ Speed. Yeah, I just think that linebacker room is pretty deep, and he might be the biggest unknown of that group. Brad asks, how's the health of our big man Ryan Kelly up the middle? He seems healthy. Looks to be performing in the offseason program. We'll get a better look at that next week. Cornerback group looking going into camp. Crowded. Certainly crowded. Extensions this offseason from Matt. I do think the Colts would like to get something done. I'm going to guess Costanzo. No update, though. I think that's now going to ramp up here a little bit now that you've gotten through the draft, your 90-man roster, all that. The Kenny Moore restricted free agent is a good question he asked there. I don't think Kenny Moore will get a new extension this year just because you have so much depth at corner. All right, two more here. Tampa, Gabe. Do you see the Colts throwing a 3-4 scheme into their game plan at all if Grover can prove to be an anchor? Maybe. Yeah, I don't think a whole lot, but if the run defense starts struggling, maybe you throw that in there. So, I think actually that wraps up our Twitter questions.
All right, man. Cool. It feels good that we can knock out a majority of them finally for the first time in a couple weeks.
I was going to say, I feel like we ran through all of them right there. So appreciate everyone listening. I know this is probably a little bit of a longer podcast, but I think it's extremely, extremely filled with detail that Chris Ballard breaking down the draft picks and then obviously his intel on just the 90-man roster. So thank you to the Colts. Thank you to Chris Ballard for doing that. I don't think many general managers around the league do that. And just think it provides good insight, good intel on why they did what they did. The why of it. He's not walking out there saying 10 Hall of Famers, but it just better explains the reasoning behind some of those picks. So 1070thefan.com has articles up on all of the draft war room intel that I got from Chris Ballard. And next Tuesday, the first OTA session, I believe that will be open to the media. So we'll probably come back next Wednesday recapping that. And if you haven't subscribed to Kevin's Corner on iTunes or Stitcher, and thanks for watching on YouTube if you're over there as well, subscribe to 1070 The Fan on YouTube if you haven't already. And everyone have a great rest of the week and a great weekend.